So let's continue. So he's saying the whole discussion here is to explain al pi seichel that the creative force, which we call chayis, which creates creation out of nothing and is invested in creation, that this force, of course, it comes from God. But the whole discussion here is whether it's separate from him or not. So aside from, as he said, well, that we believe in that, that's a matter of faith, that there's no place void of God, can be no separation. But the point is that Hashem wants us to understand this, as we explained the reason for that yesterday. So the last point he said was just like the flight of the stone. What's the point? What's the point of the marshal of the flight of the stone? It's to illustrate that when something is to behave contrary to its nature, it needs a constant force. Otherwise, its nature will assert itself. Stones don't fly. Hence, the marshal of the flight of the stone, it's only flying as long as the force is wrapped around it. As the force dissipates, the stone falls. But it's only going to be flying with this koyach constantly invested in it. So to creation is something out of nothing. And it's the biggest change possible. So for that something to exist, so there needs to be a constant force, because the nature of nature is not to exist. The nature of reality. The truth is that there shouldn't be anything other than God. So now there's creation, that's something novel, out of nothing. It has no basis, no foundation, doesn't emerge from anything, doesn't grow from anything, doesn't evolve from anything. It comes from nothing. And we pointed out that we can't even imagine nothing. So for creation to exist, it's got to be constant. And then he made the point, we started to say this before, that Hashem wants us to use the models of nature to understand him. It's all part of the kavanah. It's all part of the kavanah by divine design. It doesn't have to be this way at all, but that's what he chose, because as we explained yesterday, because of a desire for a relationship with us, and therefore he chose that looking at our reality, that should be the model wherever possible to explain, and so too above. Hence the explanation or the illustration of the stone flying that needs a constant force, because it's against the nature of the stone, is illustrative of the creation must be a constant investure directly from God and cannot be separate. That's where we're up. Now the third paragraph on Eis Dalet. Any questions on what we just said? We could still say, notwithstanding this marshal of the flying stone, we could still argue that the koyach hapoel, the divine force that creates and animates creation, issues from God, but thereafter is separate, notwithstanding this marshal. On the contrary, this marshal is going to make that point. It's constant, so the force is constant as far as the creative being is concerned. As far as God is concerned, it's once and goodbye, like throwing the stone. And now revisiting the marshal, it's actually a proof of the other way. Not only did the marshal of the throwing the stone proves, so it proves that yes, there's got to be a constant force for creation to be, otherwise it would collapse into nothingness, which is what it is, or better said, what it isn't, or it is not. As long as the stone is flying, upwards, that is. Downwards doesn't need it, upwards. Aliyah. So No, downward doesn't need any force to make it come down. You don't need the throwing force to bring it down. That's gravity.
You need something.
Nature will do its course. Stones fall. And stones don't fly. Stones fall, they don't fly. So for the stone to fly, it needs a constant force. The aliyah needs a constant force. But however, it doesn't prove. But this moshel doesn't prove that the source is attached constantly to the source and isn't separate. On the contrary, the moshel indicates that it can be separate. From this very moshel, we can bring an opposite proof. When the stone is thrown and it's sailing, it's going up against its nature. Even though when the force of the thrower has dissipates, so the scent ends, it'll start to fall. So they need a constant force. True, nonetheless, so as long as the force of the thrower is wrapped around the stone, that's enough to cause the opposite nature of a stationary or falling stone to a flying stone. And yet, this force has been separate from the thrower. It's gone from the hand to the person has disappeared, but his force continues. That even though that the force that throws it is a limited one, the whole hand to begin with, the power to throw in the hand is also limited. So it's a limited force. Now this force, when it leaves the hand and it lifts the stone, for the double limitation. The Yosek Gam Nifred, it was first limited to begin with, and now it's separate. It's number two, from the force, the energy that the person has in his arm, in his hand. Still, his point, with this limited force that is separate from him, he can make something do against his nature. This limited force that's separate from his hand, limited to begin with, now separates from his arm and hand, can effect a change in the stone contrary to its will. So let's use that as a moshel for the Eibishter, which will lead us to conclude that the divine force is separate from him. The same is true of creation. It's finite, it's limited, expiry date. It comes from God, but it lasts so long, but it comes from him in a way that is removed from him, just like the force that carried the stone. The world only lasts for 6,000 years. So God gives a big throw, it's a big force. So therefore, this divine force doesn't have to be attached. God's eternal. The world is not. So the force doesn't have to be eternal. Project it, and that's it. It's a finite force separate from him, which means it'll expire. And that's going to carry the world and sustain it and bring it into existence. Just like the force separates from the hand. And still God can do this. Like the stone is flying, he makes this novel reality of what? Of creation. Stones don't fly, creation doesn't exist. Here's a force that makes it happen. But the force is limited and separate. So we haven't answered our question. This raya from the stone is a raya that can be separate. Just like the stone is flying contrary to its nature from a force that comes from the person that's separate from him. Why not the same is true of God? So in other words, to use the moshel of the throw, God gives a huge, burst of divine energy that will sustain the world for 6,000 years. Finished. It's a big throw. And creation will sail on for 6,000 years till it's over. Why must Chayis also B, no, it's not so. It's Davuk l'mkoyre. Why does it be Davuk l'mkoyre? That's the question it's explaining. Yeah, we're clear?
I think I was under the impression that we're really here just to refute the muscle, but the point, we already concluded at the end of yesterday's year, we've reached the conclusion that we can't have a muscle that could truly describe and illustrate Lamaila.
No, the end of this year was that we can.
No, meaning that because the Abishter said that.
So once he
to the
said,
best of our abilities, but these Mishalim will continue to refute, but ultimately, in a way, this muscle proves the opposite, like.
so we have to differ.
And Ubechain, because we don't, this muscle was to really do Yeshmai is impossible because Nimna and Nimna is.
It's not. No. You're missing a piece of the puzzle here. If not for God's expressed desire that we know him, and therefore he says, listen here, I'm operating in a way that you can understand by choice, and you'll understand it from the reality that I created, we would not even begin to give any Mishalim period. It'd be the foolhardy thing to start with the Mashal.
No, we have a commandment of the Adaita, but
the Adaita from Mishalim, from the world. Why is it going to be limited? It's a divine.
Limited in the sense that we'll never.
It just means that no. Yeah, that's a fact. You're right. It just means it's limited in no Moshe is going to be perfect. This one and a mile, but the Moshe will be still. So
Good muscle.
No, so he's asking that this Moshe, he's pointing out its flaw. So we have to therefore not say, okay, give up a Mishalim. We've got to think. We've got to tweak this, find another one, and that's. But we're going to remain committed to understanding and using illustrations from life because you said that that's how you're operating. Now we're going to use our seichel to say this is a great marshal, but hang on, it's flawed here. So we have to go further in our seeking of Mishalim and in putting Mishalim in context.
Though those Mishalim will arrive at the same flaw. Right? And
then putting it all together, we will have the answer. In the end, api seichel from the world itself, we will have the sichlistic understanding why the chayis is dovuk. By putting all the pieces together. Not one particular marshal, but several, and pointing out the flaw and understanding why it's a flaw, and then using another example to compensate for that flaw, and then putting the two mishalim together, we get the picture. You're correct in saying one marshal will not do it.
I always thought that all the Mishalim will arrive us at a place where we'll be closest to Shaykh to understand it, but ultimately to understand that we can't.
That's also
true.
True.
The command to be a Daika, all those Mishalim will help and give us a good picture, but ultimately to understand Yeshmai, we can't understand.
That's true. As I said, we can't even imagine ayin, so I can possibly understand Yeshmai. Right. But the Moshe, the words of the mind was so call Masha Efshel is up your seichel. So the Efshel part is that it's constant. That's that component. That this beyond descriptive, imaginable feat of God to create Yeshmayin, we can't duplicate that. We can say the words, we can't even imagine ayin, etc. But then the next step, that's ongoing, that's Efshel Havim b'seichel, that's the word.
Elements of.
The truth is, all elements post the fundamental existence. Post the fundamental yesh ma'ayin, thereafter God's interaction with the world can be understood, including this very elemental one of a constant interaction and constant creation. So to repeat that in different words, the etzem creation is havas, we can't understand, but that it is constant, yes we can. And that's what he's explaining now. The constantness of creation from using parallels from our world.
The marshal, really.
Which marshal?
Marshal Karakazika.
Yeah.
It proves, if anything, it proves like the fact that there's an edge, and it proves that because you take gravity and a man throws a stone, and eventually it falls because we're limited. Like the fact that.
Okay, but just understand that's something here. The discussion is not proving there's a God or not.
No, I know, but then I was.
Because what's the discussion here?
It's
That,
constant.
does he have to be constantly in creating? That's the question here.
So I know that, but then
Yeah.
you can take it the next step further.
No,
Saying you can make that, the leap that just like man. Saying,
speak. No, what are you saying?
maybe I didn't formulate it enough in my head yet. Okay.
Okay, think about it and Adarabah. All right, so now we're left at this question that the moshel of the Keich HaZrika actually doesn't. The Keich HaZrika only tells us you need a constant force. It doesn't tell us that the force has to be attached to connected to the source. Why can't that constant force be separate? And therefore it'll be a finite one and it'll expire. That's true. That's exactly the moshel for creation. So it's going to now explore the moshel further and further and further. Again, this is all based on the samachs of the Rebbe Rashab, samach dalet. So how can we see from creation itself that the force must be attached to the source? It can't be separate. Answer, I'm just going to give you a heads up, it's going to refute this too. Because God still can and does manipulate and affect creation even after the creation. Now, in the case of the throwing of the stone, once you throw in the stone, goodbye, Charlie. And after he throws the stone, he's got no control. It's like a separate. Now, how the stone's going to go, how high it's going to go, etc., there's no control anymore. Once you've thrown it, right, it's literally out of his hands. Yeah? Since the force is now separate from him, he can't change it. Can't make it a stronger throw or a weaker throw. Once you throw it, he has thrown it. But God, we see, still does. Aha. So his Keich HaZrika in the marshal is attached to him. However, in creation of heaven and earth, even after the world is created, we see she has come. But God's not removed. There's all kinds of changes. The way God interacts with creation. That's true of the world at large. And it's also true of the individual person. He's the focus. The whole creation was made for these two rishis, Eden and Torah. So where do we see that Hashem is constantly interacting with us? We see that well, I don't know if you see this, but this is the reality. God's hashpah ruchni, godliness revealed in his soul and in the world. When he says David says he should, then God's revealed to him. And he goes into detail here a little bit. I mean, it's interesting. The whole thing is pure academic, haskalah, academic, and now boom, and avodah. God's not involved? Sure is. In your life, hey, basic Torah, listen to these words. In his Torah study, that somebody ways he could illustrate this. It's fascinating that this is the way he does it. So the Gemara says, when a person merits and learns Torah the way he should, the Torah becomes an elixir of life. I just want to say it, but when it doesn't learn Torah the way he should, then Torah becomes poison. The Gemara says, Samamovis. So God is constantly interacting with his creation. Baruch Nisayin Yonim. And he also begashmius. It's not like, created the world, learn, daven, and expire when it's over. No, this is a constant interplay. Huh? What's the half a minute you're thinking?
No, I'm just wondering, wouldn't the Indian Kali of Ashkafa practice bring this out more? That's involved in the world and all the details of the world.
It's actually questioning Ashkafa Pratis. Right. Then is if you say it's a Keich Nifra, then there's no Ashkafa Pratis.
Right.
That would be the part of it. So your answer is Ashkafa Pratis, the answer. Doesn't answer, that's Teva. He's got to give an answer that's demonstratively changing. The Gilul Likus and your Avodah, not nature. Hashgacha Pratis is our interpretation of nature based on the emes, etc. But he's actually questioning the whole thing. Hapiseichel, what do we say there?
Our ability to understand whatever.
That's after the
that
fact.
Hashem is involved
That's
in all
no. Because Hashem is involved in every detail. Hashgacha Pratis. But he's asking, really, why do we have to say there is Hashgacha Pratis? It's the same question. You're putting the cart before the horse. The end is it is. But we're exploring Hapi Seichel. Why must the Seichel come to that conclusion that everything is Hashgacha Pratis?
Yeah. You're going to say that they should just give one kayak, created the world, and said also whatever is going to happen for 6,000 years.
Yeah.
Then there is no free choice. There is no.
Okay, that gets thorny.
No, but there is no Hashgacha Pratis.
He could argue he created you also with your little free choice, and you can mess it up, or it gets very subtle, but the general question we get. But let's look at.
You can argue it's the same thing with Hashgacha Pratis.
That what?
That whatever ended up happening, that's the Hashgacha.
So it's not Hashgacha, so it's not live interactive. It's all programmed before, and boom, it goes. Like the stone sailing is programmed from the second you threw it. You know exactly how high it's going to go and when it's going to fall. So he's asking,
But you're saying that the Abishur can't. He couldn't, like he said, like if this is going to happen in this, if you do it this way, like we're limited in our thinking. And we can't. The reality is, right? We say that if the Abishur wanted to do it that way, he could. And he could have created a world where there was no consequence.
He's not saying that. He's not saying, not in this moment. Oh, yeah, he did say Nino and Moishe could do anything. But he's saying he did not. And next step is, how do we understand this? How you say?
Right. So,
what the world would look like if completely separate, and the end's going to be, we couldn't understand such a thing.
right.
That's not understood. That's not understood. The end's going to be what is understood is the way he did it. And the reason we understand it is because he created in such a way that we should understand. That's why we understand. Okay, so let's just get this clear here. What's the counter argument? The argument that no, it can't be like the throwing of the stone, because there is a spiritual relationship, not just cause and effect thing, that is constantly in a state of flux. Depending on my avodah, that's how God responds. Depending on how I learn Torah, that's what Torah is going to be. There's a living dynamic. So that shows God's constantly involved. Yeah. Likewise, davening. The noisef lazesh kol shenat tefillah sulam utzavat v'reish megir shemayim.
Because there's a constant interaction, he's recalculating. And so that's how we assume he's constantly involved. Because there's an input on the other side, it requires recalculation on his side. Therefore, you must be involved.
I don't real calculation, I'm not sure. Well, kind of. Yeah.
I'm saying, like you made a choice, so I need to make a counter choice.
That's what he's saying. That's basically what he's saying. He's going to counter that with, well, I'm going ahead now, okay, because you're asking it. That's not a proof either. You kind of were saying it as well, because the person threw it, yeah? Now, if he could fly very fast, he could manipulate it. He just can't, but God can. So what he's asking is, it means it's constantly involved. It means at will, at certain points, he gets involved when at certain junctures, when he chooses to, but the fundamental question is constant creation. He's going to ask, why is this a proof that there's a relationship and symbiotic and God responds? That doesn't prove constant creation of everything. It just means that he is, unlike us, I can't control the stone. He can control the stone. And you chayis, and you ashpa. So there's a new separate chayis, and you boom, and you throw, He's constantly throwing throws.
Just want to suggest the interaction does not suggest constant involvement.
That's going to be his next question. That's exactly his next refutation of this. All it means is another throw. That's coming. Okay, let's move through it quickly and get to it then. But it's important here It's important here that in this academic, again, Torah academic discussion, we're really like getting, this mind has to understand the God. He's throwing in the avodah. Maybe this is important for us. What's the avodah? God is interaction in your davening, your learning, first learning, and then now davening. Let's see what he says about davening. So the nice of the in addition to the fact that prayer altogether is a ladder. So you're praying to God, there's a ladder, there's rungs, there's levels. There's levels on the ladder. So that's a change. So we're having a changing, living relationship with God, right? Closer, further. He's responding. In addition to that, sometimes God answers your prayer, sometimes not. So he's definitely involved. It's not a throw, creation, see you in 6,000 years. And I put all the divine mechanisms, and it's going to run by itself, the most perfectly, oiled machine. Clearly not. Davening is an interaction. Davening is somebody answers, somebody doesn't answer.
AI now, the computer models, it learns from itself. So really AI is like the closest thing we can probably, the muscle.
And AI is separate, it's not involved. It's just reacting.
No, but the AI, there's computer learning, right? Now the robot can learn from its past experiences and manipulate the future.
Oh, so you're saying that this machine is really an interactive, really dynamic machine, like AI. Beautiful, makes it even stronger.
The creator of AI put it in.
They created, including AI and Keser into hate, and see in 6,000 years. Well, here's all the. Good point. Let's get this is getting personal. Like it's fascinating. The big. The contrast here is so what's the word? Startling, mental. So when a person is being misbeinen and davening, why is he being misbeinen? His whole objective is he wants to understand the Inyan. So what kind of davening is he's got the wealth of understanding. He learned the Maamar, and then he's davening and he processes and davening and rethinks the Maamar, and he understands it. Has no effect on him. Because his whole objective is he wants to understand. But if the whole point of his understanding is he wants to get closer to God, in order to be aroused in love and awe during davening. And more than that, his whole davening is that he should walk out of davening. His behavior should reflect his davening. As a yid, as a chassid, because the main thing is the action. That's his whole abundance. That's his whole learning. That's his whole davening. As a yeshlei, then such a yid, he has this chassid, this he's got the wealth, the richness of understanding. And the bottom line, he's got closer to God. So this is a very evolving flux of a relationship that's in a constant state of change and flux. And the person is the whole objective of creation. And we see in the person there's these constant changes. He's changing. God responds in kind, and God is constantly changing his interaction with the world. And moreover, the big picture, we see this in the difference between the way God interacts with the world with the time Beis Hamikdash existed and the time of Golus. When the Beis Hamikdash existed, there's tremendous hashpah. Each person under his vine, under his fig tree. And there was tremendous hashpah in nature. There was the divine revelation beyond nature. There were 10 miracles constant Beis Hamikdash. Mashing is Managol is God's is not revealing himself this way. In Golas, because of our sins, we've been exiled. As he conducts himself opposite, not miraculous, not abundance. So what's the conclusion? It's a dynamic relationship. So conclusion, we have to say, of course he's involved constantly. Because since after created, we see these changes, macro and micro, the way he conducts the world according to his will, and he's reacting to what? To what? To us. We want to conclude, therefore, that the creative force is not separate, God forbid, because we see his constant responses. So it's like in that sense, it's not like the throw where the force is constant, but it's removed from the thrower. No. There it's separate. Therefore, we cannot change it once it's gone. But we see the fact that God is constantly creating, responding, means that his creative force is constantly being outputted by him and not a one-time investure. But then, as you all pointed out, no, it's a one-time investor. He just makes another investor, another one, another throw at will. And there's a famous book. He's since passed it. I've quoted him. When bad things happen to good people, it's sold in the hundreds of millions. He lost a doctor, Dr. Harold Kushner. He lost a child. And he basically argued this. He stopped here. Boom. He said, God, it's a throw. There's the laws of nature. There's going to be mutated genes. There's going to be earthquakes. Don't blame God. That's just the way nature works. Now, God once in a while gets involved. But not always. Not only does he get involved and then manipulate, his creation that he has set up that basically operates by the laws of nature. That's his and that's how he expunges God. You're not being punished. Don't feel guilty. He wasn't directly involved. This was set up thousands of years ago when that big throw of creation with all the laws of creation, and things are going to collide, and that's the beauty and the terror and of creation. So that's it. That's his answer. Because people, why did it happen? Guilty. My child, what I do? No one's at fault. This is nature. God sometimes gets involved. As we can't, that's at his discretion. Miracles, they don't happen. He's arguing up to here. Ad Khan, finished. But he says, no. God, you're not off the hook. He wants to argue that God's not responsible. He made nature, and that's got to be respected. So aside from the fact, so why could you, when this thing happens, so meddle and fix it? Aside from that argument, as we're going to learn the end of the Maimon, no, Hashem's constantly creating, and therefore he is responsible, etc. I'm just going to conclude, because this is a very, very painful subject. If anybody's going through any difficulty in life, and everybody's to some degree, or someone that is. I've said this often. If there's one time, friends, there's one time we should be saying Tachanun, it's in a mourner's house. Death comes because of sin. If there's one day in the year we should say Tachanun, it's Tisha B'Av. The whole Golus comes, and just laying it bare, Hashem says, do not say Tachanun. In this moment of your pain, I got to tell you, it's not your fault. Yeah, this is my awesome plan, and I take responsibility. Don't strike your heart in the Shiva house. No Tachanun. And on the saddest day of the year, Churban, Golus, no Tachanun. No Tachanun. So the simple halacha, it's really revealing this deep truth. And I also once said before, the nachmu, the double expression of comfort. Why need double expression? Be comforted. God is like apologizing, quote unquote, be comforted. First of all, I'm sorry. The first comfort is, one day you're going to see that this is retroactively all good in me. That's a comfort then. The second comfort is, I'm sorry that till then you feel this pain and abandoned, etc. And that's the deep in the Chama. That's the deep in the Chama. And dear friends, I got to tell you, this is a dangerous information, because we can terribly exploit it. So, but we trust you. It starts at the very beginning. Adam Barishan. In Tehillim, there's a pasuk, Noira Alila B'nei Adam, God plots awesomely against man. The Medrash says that after Adam sinned from death comes to the world, expelled from the Garden of Eden, etc. I mean, everything starts from there. And in Christianity, it's the original sin, and we're still paying for it. So Adam turns to the Eibishter and says, wait a second, hold on. Whoa. You're blaming me for death. He was privy to the Torah. He saw the Torah. In Torah, there's the laws of Adam Kamas Ba'ayah, laws of Tumah Tahara. You wrote this before. Mitzvahs before creation. You're blaming me? This is in your Torah. Forget the story, the narrative. The mitzvahs are eternal. You know what Hashem's response is? Silence. No, it's because of you that God acquiesces. Tak. So I think this gets very thorny. In the end, it's all Davish to get, it's our free will, we're part of it there. So, as you were saying, we will never, the Seichel will never reconcile God's only reality and this creation, and we have free choice. It's all Mashgacha Prat, it's all meant to be. Never fully, neatly, you can't. It's Pashit, it's Eibishter. But very close. I don't know, but close to the point where we can embrace our role b'simcha and embrace God's role b'simcha. I don't have the words for this, what the end result is, but God says, I want you to know me as much as you can know me, with the inevitable, in the end, unresolved and contradictions. But along the way, you'll know me, because it's all emes. All the things you're going to know about me are true. You can't reconcile all of it, but they're all true. It's all me and it's all you. That's true. They're truths. And you're going to somehow reconcile them to the degree that you can and struggle with it. I want that. I want you to struggle to get to know me, because that's how that's how we become one. Constantly working on it, like a marriage. It's constant work, and that's how you become one. Constantly working on it. It's not easy street now. We're in love forever and la di da. No, it's constant work. Huh? It's constant work, and therein lies the oneness. And so the Eibush is the constant work to understand him. That's how we're connected this deeply. All right, friends, to be continued with your question tomorrow, that just because God meddles in creation doesn't mean he's constantly involved. He meddles. So what's the raya? So we're going to go further. Finally, at the end of the end, we'll see what the Maimon says. Cliffhanger.